My name is Rebecca. I'm the Bee Biosecurity Officer for Queensland, and I'm going to be talking about bee biosecurity and bee pests and diseases. They're really important because they don't just pose a threat to your hive. Of course, our honey industry is really important, but for most of you guys, you're probably more concerned about the role that bees play in pollinating our crops and plants. Good bee biosecurity practices let us detect any pests easy. It means we can be more likely to be able to eradicate them or prevent their spread. And as Kerry mentioned, you're required by law to meet your general biosecurity obligation. And there's a few things that you can do as a beekeeper to make sure that you do this. The first one is to register. Even if you've just got one hive, you need to be registered and you need to mark your HIN or hive identification number on the front of your hive. The next one is to check your pests regularly for pests and diseases. Now, the bare minimum is twice a year. We recommend closer to once every 4 to 6 weeks is a good number of times. Report notifiable pests and diseases, which I'll talk about in a minute. Practice go clean, come clean, which Kerry has already talked about. If you're buying equipment that's secondhand or used, ensure that it's come from a really clean source, and if you can, get it irradiated or sterilised. Practice good bee husbandry, which I'll also go over, and instigating a barrier system, which I'm not going to talk about, but if you grab one of my cards, on the back of this card has a QR code, and this links through to all of my online talks about bees. So it's a really good resource. There's also some other handouts over there, including our Australian Honeybee Industry Biosecurity Code of Practice. There's a manual for beekeepers. It's got all the information about pests and diseases. It's a really good resource. And the Bee Aware website, which should be, if you're a beekeeper or you're interested in bees, the place to go for information because it has the most updated stuff, particularly for Australia. There's a training course that's free, run by Plant Health Australia. Also, you'll find that on the Bee Aware website. And me, for at least a little while. On the back of the card as well is a general email that you can use when I go on maternity leave. So before I talked about checking your hive for pests and diseases, there's a range of pests and diseases you should be looking for. They include exotic pests that we don't have here in Australia yet, so a whole range of exotic bees, as well as mites, so tracheal mites, tropicolaps and varroa mites, and large hive beetle. And we've also got some endemic pests, which include European and American foul brood, sac brood and chalk brood, small hive beetle, which if you're a beekeeper you will have seen, brawler fly, Nosema, wax moth, ants, and we've also got Asian honeybees on this list too. This is an endemic pest because we do have it in the north of Queensland, but if you find it outside of that known area anywhere else in Queensland, you need to report that one. Ooh. Just for your interest, and in particular, people who are out and about and looking at crops, particularly beekeepers, are probably the people who are going to find exotic bees if they do come in. I've got just a few here that we're really looking for. We've got our European honeybee, which is the one that we want, we use, that you'll see all the time in our hives. We've also got Asian honeybees, and I've hand around today, I'm sorry, this has been to 2 school days recently, it's a little bit worse for wear, but we've got some examples of the European and the Asian honeybee, as well as some other hive pests in there, so feel free to pass that one around. And we've got a few other bees there. Giant honeybee and dwarf honeybee are similarly very much bigger than our European and very much smaller than our European honeybees. Our Cape honeybee can be quite difficult to determine difference between it and our European honeybee. And Africanized bees are really told apart from any other bee because they're nasty. They will chase you down the street, kind of nasty. If you come across any of these are what we call notifiable pests, and you need to give us a call and report them. So you can call the hotline, you can call the National Exotic Plant Pest Hotline, or your local apiary officer. And of those pests I've talked about and the ones that are notifiable, all of the exotic pests fall under that list. So all those ones on the that are highlighted in yellow, as well as a few endemic ones. So the Asian honeybee, the brawler fly, and what a lot of people don't realize is American foul brood is also a notifiable disease. So every time you find it, you need to notify us. So checking your pests, your hive regularly for pests and diseases, few different steps: an external observation, an internal observation for things like scavenger pests, a brood examination, so looking at the baby bees in the bottom box, a drone uncapping, and a sugar shake or an alcohol wash. And if you are a beekeeper or you have bees, come over to me later and I'm going to go through how to do a sugar shake and an alcohol wash. I want to also quickly go through one of the key diseases that we tend to have a lot of problems with, and that's American foul brood. And this should be part of checking for American foul brood, should be part of your brood inspection, so looking at the baby bees. Things you want to look at is the pattern of brood. So is it uneven or shotgun, like on the side here? Healthy larvae will be a nice even pattern. If the cell cappings are dark or sunken, that's an indicator you should look more closely. If you see the larvae and they don't look pearly white and lying on their side, then look closer. If they are discoloured or mouldy or dead, again, that's a sign you might have a pest or disease. And finally, if there's a bad smell in your hive, if it smells like a rotten orange or a dead animal, that's another indicator. So look, it's not very nice. Look a little closer. If you see any of those things, grab a matchstick and any cell that's a bit dodgy. So if it's got a hole in it or if it's sunken or dark, stick that matchstick in, dig it around and see what comes out. If it's a thick, ropey kind of caramelized goo, then you could have American or European foul brood. If it's chalk-like, or it's a bit hard, it looks like it's got bread mold on it, could be white, grey, right through to black. We're talking chalk brood. And if it's a tough fluids field sac, we're talking sac brood. And if it's in your queen cells, black queen cell virus. So what if you get that goo that's brown and gooey and not very pleasant? You could have AFB or EFB. And what you need to do is take that matchstick that you've just dipped in that cell, stick it in a little sample bottle like this one here. There's plenty over there somewhere to grab. I'll grab that in the car. And put in it with a sample submission form and send it in to the lab to be tested. In the meantime, don't use any of your equipment on anything else because it's very easily spread. You'll get a call from me, let you know what disease or pest it is you're dealing with, and I'll talk you through what you need to do. But just so you know, American foul brood is one that we do need to destroy the hives. So make sure that you keep that in mind when it comes to dealing with that hive and keeping it separate. You don't want it spreading through the rest of your hives. And very quickly, I want to talk a little bit about pesticides. Many pesticides will impact on bees. A sign that your bees has been impacted by pesticides is usually there are a lot of bees that are dead. So we're talking hundreds or thousands of bees that are dead, not just a few dead bees at the front of your hive. To prevent pesticide poisoning, one of the key things that we need to do is have good communication between the farmers and our beekeepers. So if you're a beekeeper, let the local people and farmers know you've got hives there. And similarly, if you're a farmer and you know there's bees in the area, if you can contact that beekeeper and let them know when you're spraying. There is a Bee Connected app which you can log on to and you can check where the local hives are if the local beekeepers have put them in there. And so we're encouraging both sides to play a part in that. Thanks. And we've got a risk management tool over there as well if you want to have a look at that one. That is a good list of all the different pesticides and how they impact on bees. So what you can do to make sure you keep a strong hive and to reduce the chances you'll get pests and diseases is to have good bee husbandry. That includes leaving your bees with plenty of honey over any period when they're going to have it a bit tough. So it could be winter time or sometimes it's drought. And if there's not sufficient food, then consider feeding your bees. Reduce the number of supers over the winter time and regularly requeen your hive every 2 to 4 years. And replace out any old brood comb. So we're talking every 3 to 4 years, switch those brood comb out. Keep your hive dry and protected from extreme conditions, and cane toads can spread some of these pests and diseases. So keep them up on a stand so that the cane toads don't get near them.